Fractions aren't about math, they're about sharing. And who doesn't like to share pizza? So many students get so caught up on fractions. But if that is you, today we're going to dive into fractions, all about it, so that you can relieve yourselves from the stress. So let's go to sharing my screen. And so we can talk about fractions and let it be less intimidating for you. And yeah, we can learn to share together because that's what fractions are all about. So let's dive in. So when we talk about fractions, right, the notion of fractions came up because we are talking about parts, right? No longer do we have a whole. And so let's say, for instance, I drew a pizza or a cake. You can call it whatever you'd like. This is my whole. Fractions came into play, and if you were to go back in the day where we have, let's say, cavemen, they had to figure out a way to represent parts of a whole, parts of something, and that is why fractions came about. Because if you had something that you had to give a piece of to somebody, well, how do you represent that? That is what fractions are. Given a piece, sharing is caring. Now, let's talk about when we have a fraction, right? With a fraction, you're going to have a bar, and that bar is just saying, okay, we are dividing, right? And so I was previously teaching the concept of fractions, and my students didn't even understand what the bar meant. And so the bar is simply saying you're dividing your whole. So at the bottom of the fraction, you're going to have the whole. In other words, total number of parts. Okay. That's what the bottom represents. How many parts do you have altogether? That's what's going to go on the bottom of your fraction. And we also refer to the bottom of the fraction as the denominator, right? That's going to be my denominator. So if you hear me say denominator, I'm talking about the bottom piece. Now, when we talk about the top of the fraction, this is going to be how many pieces we are actually taking or giving away, right? And so this is the number of pieces taken. Oh, excuse me. Right? And this is now also known as my numerator. Okay? And so that's really majority of what you need to know about fractions, okay? You have your numerator that is going to be how many pieces we're taking, and the denominator is going to be your whole. So let's use, I know it looks like air right now, but let's use this circle. And it could be a pizza, it could be a cake. This is what we're dividing. So let's start with the simplest thing. If I drew a bar straight across, okay, notice I have 1, 2 pieces, right? And so I didn't mean to do that, but this really gives me a fraction. That was an accident. But at any rate, we have 2 pieces here. Okay, let me not confuse us. All right, so we have 2 pieces. So my denominator here would be just that, 2. Okay, my denominator would 2 because we have a total of 2 pieces. Now, a lot of times when it comes to fractions, we shade to represent how much we're taking, how much we're giving away, right? And so let's say we shaded the top only. Well, how many parts are shaded? Because remember, this is telling me how many parts are being taken away. How many pieces are shaded? Well, just 1. So the shaded region represents 1 part shaded out of 2. 1 part, and let me use my highlighter here, 1 part shaded out of 2 parts, okay? So this fraction is 1/2, or you may say 1/2, right? Because it was split into 2 halves, all right? Now, it is not always going to be a fraction split in two pieces, right? So let's say we can keep it this way to show some type of equivalence. Now, let's say we split this into 4 pieces. What do you notice happening here? Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, right? So my denominator now becomes 4. My numerator, look at this. This is a very good way to also show what equivalence fractions are. Now we still have a half of the circle shaded, right? But how many pieces out of the 4? Let me use another color here so we can see. How many pieces out of the 4 are shaded? Well, what do you notice? Well, right now we have 2 pieces shaded, okay? And so since 2 pieces are shaded, but it's still a half of the circle that's shaded, we call these what we say equivalent fractions. They represent the same shaded region of your whole, or the same portion of your whole that you're giving away, except now you're doing it in parts of 4. And we can go as far as, let's say, we split this now into not 4 pieces. Let's say we split the same circle. Now, instead of having 4 pieces, and so maybe I should have erased the numbers first. So let me erase those now. So what do we notice? How many pieces do we have when it comes to this beautiful, colorful line? This would be, and I can use a highlighter here. This is 1 piece. This would represent 2 pieces. Right here. This would represent the 3rd piece, the 4th piece, the 5th piece is not drawn to scale, okay? And the 6th piece, okay? Now we have split this. And if we were to make it, it can be 6 or it can be 8. If you were to look at it, making it evenly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But let's say it's 6 pieces first. So if we were to look at it as 6 pieces, my denominator would now be 6, okay? And then how many shaded regions do we have for the 6 pieces? 1, 2, 3. So 3 pieces are shaded, right? And when I say shaded, it's going to be the entire half of the circle, the top. And so that also is telling us, right, 1/2 is equal to 2/4, which is also equal to 3/6. But let's say, and let me use another circle just the same. Let's say we use that same circle, the same pizza, so we're not confusing any. And let's do the half this way like we did before, right? Now, let's say previously we did it that way. And I believe I came straight down the middle. And I said, well, this could also be looked at as 8 pieces. That is because it can be, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there you have 8 pieces. So again, now can you tell me what will be the denominator? Well, the denominator is the total. Very good. You guessed it right. So that's going to be 8. How many pieces? And if we were still to keep the top part shaded, how many pieces do we have shaded? Well, we have 4 pieces shaded. So 4/8 is the same as, let's see, 3/6, which is the same as 2/4, which is the same as 1/2. These are all what we call equivalent fraction. Okay, these are all equivalent fractions. Okay, and that's a very important idea to have. When we talk about equivalent fractions, that is basically talking about what parts of the whole are equal to each other, okay? Because the only thing that changes when it comes to an equivalent fraction is the number of pieces we're cutting the pie into. But the shaded region, or the amount that you're giving away, is going to be the same proportion. All right. So I think that's enough for today. And so we can do a quick recap, right? So when it comes to fractions, you're going to have a whole, right? And you're splitting that whole into pieces, okay? And so in splitting the whole into pieces, the other word that we can use is we're dividing, right? We're dividing. And so that's what that bar represents, division. So we're dividing the whole into pieces that you're giving away, that you're shading, that you're taking for yourself, right? So we're dividing. And so on the top, we have our numerator, and the bottom, we have our denominator. And so the top is telling you how many pieces of the whole you're giving away out of the numerator, the denominator, which is on the bottom. And so, of course, we also looked at your equivalent fractions, which is just you having the same proportion or the same number of pieces. Well, not necessarily the number of pieces, but the same portion of your whole that you're giving away, you're keeping for yourself, right? Or you're shading, but now your whole is being split into different number of pieces. So I hope this was helpful. Do like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, let me know what it is in the comment that you are dividing. Are you dividing up your pizza? Are you dividing up your cake? Are you dividing up your candy? What are you dividing today? Have a good one.